Hey everybody, this is Michael from One Sky. Peace to the star family, back with another lunar cycle video. This lunar cycle is dense and a little bit complicated and very exciting. So we're going to take a look at this starting with the new moon on the 21st of June 2020. It's an eclipse, as will the full moon be. So the last full moon before this was an eclipse. So it's eclipse season, rounding out 2020 with this second wave of eclipses. The first wave of eclipses back in the beginning of the year sort of sounded off with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. And this wave of eclipses sounds off with Jupiter making its second contact, the big one, to Pluto in Sagittarius. We're going to take a look at this from the point of view of true sidereal astrology, also known as constellational or astronomical astrology. So we're using the exact size and locations of the constellations in the sky instead of an approximate zodiac. This is most like sidereal astrology. It's most like Vedic or Western sidereal, but it's a little bit different from all mainstream forms of astrology. So this is how things have always been done. Kind of before the invention in Babylon of the approximate zodiac, just all star watching cultures and astrological cultures use the actual skies. So this is kind of a return to the ancient, more so than a modern invention. I have a little construction outside my window today. It's might come through this monitor, but I'm late getting this video out, so I really have to just sit down right now and kind of jam out on all this information. I hope the construction isn't annoying. So let's take a look. This is the new moon on the 21st of June 2020, and as you can see, it takes place on the Gemini and Taurus cusp, with the sun and moon conjoined to the north node. This is right in the degree of Orion's club, which is really near to the ecliptic. So this is a constellation that used to be read in ancient Babylon, and this is where those astrologers would have placed this constellation. Orion is really about practical, down-to-earth, nitty-gritty getting stuff done, like real world. It was the hunter, so it was concerned with getting food, like just primary, metabolic needs at the base of the pyramid of our hierarchy of needs, and that's Orion in essence, taking care of basic needs, getting stuff done, real world activity. Also on the Gemini and Taurus cusp, we may see themes of movement, of assets. We may see themes around the development of ideas, having to do in this case with Mercury's placement on the star Sirius, which is really important. A very important placement because Mercury rules Gemini, and so is the dispositor of the sun and moon. So the aspects to Mercury indicate the possibility for healing here with Chiron, and the possibility for insight here with Neptune in Pisces, and as well as Mercury being at home in its own stars of Gemini, we have Venus at home in her own stars of Taurus. We have Neptune at home in Pisces. The full moon sees Saturn at home in Capricorn, and Jupiter here is at home in Sagittarius. So we have a lot of energies that are going to be intensified or accentuated in the kind of clarity or purity of their expression. I don't really want to take the time in this video to get into what all of those mean. If you're curious, there's certainly information out there if you were to just go to a search engine and check out Venus in Taurus. What does that mean? You will find it. So I will leave that for the people who want to focus on that aspect. And I want to move on to kind of the main event of this lunar cycle. While we're just kind of taking a look at this in overview, the main event definitely here with Jupiter and Pluto coming into conjunction in Sagittarius. And this to me really symbolizes a rebirth of hope, of faith, of vision, of optimism. I think we'd seen a little bit of a death of that. I think 2020 really throat punched a lot of people, and we're all kind of like trying to catch our breath again. And this event is going to be this event of conjunction between Jupiter and Pluto. I call it the main event, but we could look at it as a sort of context or backdrop for the whole cycle. So it's going to be a very important event happening this cycle. I think on the 9th lunar day of this cycle it goes exact. Taking a look at the aspects to the new moon, we can see a square to Mars. And last lunar cycle, if you remember, there was a square to Mars. And whenever there's a square to a planet that the new moon makes, it's going to be an accentuated planet. It's going to be an important planet. And that's because when the moon is making its waxing quarter, which is a sort of like critical point, a sort of stress point of emergence in the cycle, it will be opposite that body. It'll be opposite that squared body. And when it makes its full moon, signifying the fruition or the apex of the cycle, it will be square to that body. So this body, in this case Mars, is going to figure really prominently into the major signature of this lunar cycle, being the waxing quarter, the full moon, and the waning quarter. The waning quarter will take place I believe in wide conjunction to Mars. The moon will be here in Pisces for the waning quarter. So let's take a look at this. I want to dig a little bit deeper into the nature of some of these alignments. That last little bit, that intro, was just an overview to kind of give a little bit of the flavor. But when we look at an eclipse, automatically we can see which Saros cycle does this belong to. And a Saros cycle is a cycle of eclipses that begins at the north or south pole, and over time, over thousands of years, works its way down. And right now there are 41 Saros cycles active, and these are cycles of eclipses, and they all have a flavor. They have a personality. They have their own chart, and they have their own energy. So I want to read a little about this Saros cycle, and this is a Saros cycle that is been active since 1389 AD, and this will be active until the year 2633. So we're catching this right about in the middle of its activity. And having watched this cycle for 700 years, here's what we know about it. It's about restriction, inhibition, restraint, separation, and illusions. Those are the trademarks of this family of eclipses. Events can occur which seem to block the individual. In this blocking, the individual is very prone to misjudge his or her strengths or the situation, and is best advised to wait until the energy passes before taking any real action. This is a difficult Saros series. So that's from Bernadette Brady in her book, The Eagle and the Lark, in which she outlines all the active Saros series right now and much more. It's a fantastic book. I want to say that this energy, this template, this mark, and how we respond to it is going to set off events in our lives over the next 6 lunations, the next sort of half year. That's how long an eclipse season lasts. So this doesn't define the next 6 months, but this is going to be the sort of springboard, and I want to encourage everybody to be aware of this and to react accordingly. React as wisely as we can, and not misjudge our strengths or the situation if we can possibly help it. There's a lot of tension right now, so all of this is in context of the emerging, global situation. We have to look at it as an influence that's going to affect maybe us individually, but it's also going to have its effect on institutions. It's going to have its effect on society broadly. It can have really broad effect. And looking towards the stars behind the sun and moon, right here is a very activated degree of the sky. The sun and moon are within 9 minutes of Menkalennin, which is Beta Auriga. It's a star associated with initiative and enthusiasm, but also associated with impulsiveness and recklessness, and caution and objective second thought are highly recommended when the sun and moon are in this degree. Another star in this degree is Betelgeuse, which is which is very close to its death. And when the sun and moon are with it, it is an omen of war and carnage, according to Ptolemy. So, according to Ptolemy, it is said to give a strong and dignified nature, self-confidence, inconsistency, arrogance, violence, and impiety, prosperity in trade, and particularly by voyages or abroad. And thirdly, the sun and moon, we can see here the sun and moon are making several conjunctions to fixed stars, important fixed stars. And thirdly, we have Polaris, which Polaris is the Alpha Ursa Major, the pole star. So it's in this eclipse is happening in that degree. And the Big Bear, the Ursa Major constellation, is just generally considered unfortunate for states and kings when the sun and moon are there. So all of this is conjoined to the North Node here, Rahu, and it emphasizes looking ahead. It emphasizes creating the future. It emphasizes, it emphasizes forward vision, while the South Node, which is here, is coming close to the galactic center. So it will experience a sort of, as it passes the galactic center, the South Node will sort of reset or experience a little bit of a death and a rebirth. And so the way we deal with the South might be reflected in that. The way we deal with the past, the way we deal with the past in the South Node might reflect a change, a sort of death and rebirth. And the way we deal with the future is actually what's being highlighted here, what's really going to be brought front and center. So very dynamic, very, very ominous arrangement, if you ask me. And you know, there is a lot of good news. This is just the sun and moon are aligned in a degree of the sky that could prove to be difficult in any circumstances. And in this circumstance, we have a difficult eclipse cycle playing a role. There are some aspects here, especially to planets in Pisces. So we can see that the sun and moon here in Gemini are sextile up to Eris, square up to Mars, and we have an inconjunct to Saturn. We're square to Mars, the sun and moon. For the new moon, we're square to Mars for the second new moon in a row. If you remember, the last new moon also happened square to Mars, but Mars moves pretty quickly, so it kind of can keep up a little bit with the way that the sun is moving. The sun moves about twice as fast, but Mars can sort of keep a little pace there. And it's here, it's in Pisces now. So last cycle, if you're thinking, oh man, you know, last cycle we saw this uprising, this political upheaval, this racial justice movement, all of this, you know, coronavirus, all this hoorah fuss, police brutality, and so on. Well, Mars was in Aquarius last month, and that is a little bit more of an explosive and dynamic and catalytic influence, especially with Uranus in Aries on Hamal. These are kind of going to act in tandem to really kind of light stuff up. Mars in Pisces is a much more subdued influence, and really could be driven to explore like the spiritual or the deep, the peaceful. We could really, with Mars in Pisces, be inspired, Pisces, around confidence and assertiveness, which is Mars, especially as it relates to our drive. Mars to understand and experience the spiritual. That's Neptune, which it's conjoined to, and Pisces, the spiritual. So there could be self-deception around assertiveness. There could be maybe passive aggression. There could be really deep emotional expressions of personal energy. But on the whole, Pisces is a much more Pacific influence on Mars. And it's not that Mars is unhappy here, it's just that it's a little subdued. It's not so brazen. And I think for that reason, the emphasis of the stars of Aries, including Hamal, which Uranus is still transiting, Uranus still on the stars of Hamal, still on the star of Hamal, that being the Ram's head, Alpha Aries, it's a very pugnacious influence. And because Mars is subdued, sympathetically Aries will be subdued. And so we actually may see, even though Mars is prominent in this cycle, we actually are likely to see a little bit less of the explosive displays as Mars transits Pisces. All these aspects are pretty wide that the sun is making, that the sun and moon are making. So we have this wide sextile to Eris, and that Eris is squaring up to the big movers here in late Sag, early Cap, Pluto, Jupiter, and Saturn. And so we may feel like we can get in touch with some of the chaos surrounding the current situation, and we may feel empowered by a little bit of that chaos, or we may just feel a little more comfortable with some of the confusion. Eris in Pisces brings confusion. It can also give spiritual inspiration. It can really can strengthen our work ethic. It can bring inspiration, which strengthens our work ethic. With Neptune at home, we may really be able to notice some informative dreams and strange dreams, and you know, we could be open to bringing things into the real world, which is what this new moon is really about on Orion's club, just bringing things into, bringing the future into the world, making this happen, you know, just in a practical way. And rather than all the negative and heavy influences here, I want to focus on this like Orion's club influence of just with the North Node, that being the practical building of the future, with that combined with this cycle's Jupiter-Pluto conjunction is really where we want to lean in if we're going to harness the positive potential of all of these difficult this difficult cycle. The event of the new moon itself, this eclipse, does portend certain challenges, certain difficulties. On the other hand, we have to be realistic about that. But the backdrop or the context is the Jupiter-Pluto conjunction, which is really likely to be a rebirth of optimism and hope, of a vision, of view, of worldview. In Sag, this is going to have a sweeping effect on our planet. And looking at the dispositor of the moon, Mercury, a little closer, I did mention this alignment with fixed star Sirius. It's very close at 3 arc minutes, and that's interesting to me because Mercury and Sirius is a sign of innovation. And when we see trine up to Neptune in Pisces, we really, and this is on the Pisces-Aquarius cusp, we really could see a lot of inspiration here in a visionary way. We could see something come through that was very inspired, especially around, you know, quite possibly, we do have Chiron also in Pisces here, square to Mercury. So we have the visionary and the inspired influence of Neptune in Pisces, and we have the medicinal influence of Chiron. And this is the connections that Mercury is making, as well as a sextile to Uranus. So all of this, when you get Mercury and Uranus connected, you see genius, you see very high expression of intelligence. Mercury and Neptune connected, you see visionary insight, you see inspiration of the weirder kind, of the kind of, you know, dreams and visions and almost like magical insight. And Chiron brings the element of healing, of medicine, of curative power. So with Mercury on Sirius is just a very innovative, inventive, successful alignment. It's poised for success. Elon Musk has his Mercury in this degree, very close to fixed star Sirius. Sirius is the brightest star in the sky, and a very, 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 very interesting star that we're not going to get into today. So that's the template. That's the new moon in a nutshell. And I spend so long looking at the new moon because it really is just such the imprint, the main influence. It's like the natal chart of the whole cycle. So we're going to take a quick look at some of the other major activation points in the cycle, namely the first quarter moon, which is happening in Virgo. And this is happening in grand trine to Jupiter and Venus. I'm sorry, that looked like Saturn when I... Yeah, this is happening in grand trine to Saturn and Venus, with Mars at the head of this kite and the moon opposite Mars. So we may see the Martian energies you know, activated again through the whole course of the cycle. But again, with that Mars in Pisces, we may see gentler, more spiritual, even more forgiving, and kinder, more peaceful expressions of Martian energy. I also think that the Grand Trine is really going to emphasize the moon here and the qualities of Mercury, because the sun is in Gemini, Mercury's stars, and the moon is in Virgo, which is also ruled by Mercury. So we may see a very intellectual expression. We may see a rather curious expression, or a dynamic, very movement-oriented expression of energies this cycle. Things may be particularly dynamic. Mercury hardly ever sits still, and it always likes to be on to the next thing almost before it's done with the first thing. It loves to start things. Mercury loves to initiate things. And with this moon, we also see an opposition to Chiron, so further emphasizing those themes of medicine. We actually have Mercury. T-squaring a moon Chiron opposition. So we may be compelled along the lines of this deeper exploration of healing, of medicine. We may be inspired in a personal way to, explore any kind of, especially mental energies or mental approach around balancing our intuitive world, this Pisces influence, with the mental world, because Virgo is very mental, but it's an earth sign. It's mutable earth. So, and it's accentuated in its earthiness by this grand trine, because Taurus and Capricorn are also earth signs, where Saturn sits on the cusp of Capricorn and Sag. So very grounded, but very mental, and bringing in the emotional qualities of Pisces. We may have a lot of reconciliation open to us as this lunar cycle develops. And the full moon takes place in the stars of Sagittarius, widely conjoined to Jupiter, which has just contacted Pluto for this sort of resurgence of expansive energy, jovial energy, optimism, positivity, opportunity, wealth, open doors. All of these are the themes of Jupiter. Jupiter, if anything, can go too far. So especially in light of the stamp of this Saros cycle and the need to curb any reckless or impulsive kind of like reactionary impulses, we want to be careful with this full moon in Sag not to go too far, not to think we got this, but just to enjoy that sense of rebirth and expanse, that sense of opportunity that Jupiter conjoined to Pluto is going to represent. I think there is going to be a strong expression here that's going to carry us through the end of the year, and is going to carry us through this eclipse season. Because as the dust of these eclipses settle, Jupiter moves a little bit closer to its December conjunction with Saturn. Before then, it will go direct and come back in November for a third touch on Pluto. And then moving quickly, it'll rendezvous with Saturn. And all that will be at the end of this year, November, December 2020. So just putting things into context, because this is an eclipse and we're looking at 6-month cycles. We're looking at Jupiter being very accentuated for those 6 months. And then at the crest of that wave, as that wave has been integrated in November with the third contact, we'll see the integration of this new optimism, new hope, new worldview. And then that new Jupiterian sense of expanse and hope will conjoin, and it will meet up with Saturn's gravity and discipline and structure and order and just so. And we'll have, with the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in December 2020, the great conjunction of these times. And that is a major establishment to the balance and the expression of power, of worldly power. This is chiefly concerning the way things will be structured as we move into a sort of new normal, if you will. So this is huge. This is big. That's why I'm going on about this. I'm not just, babbling. This is important to understand, and it's important to understand in context. We do see this full moon T-squared by Chiron. So more so than Mars in this lunar cycle, we're seeing Chiron play the role of kind of posting up in that square position and affecting all of the stress points of the cycle, all of the dynamic points of the cycle. Beyond that, there's a lot here. This could be a busy time. There's a lot happening. All I really want to focus on is the Pluto-Jupiter conjunction, the Pluto-Jupiter conjunction, and the fact that it's happening on the fixed star of Peacock, Alpha Pavo. And Peacock is called Peacock because it has an energy that it imparts that's very flashy, very splashy, very big and peacock. So we may really see that lend energy to this Jupiter burst too. That'll be interesting to watch in the degree of Peacock, as Pluto sits just 6 minutes off for the full moon. Looking ahead to the waning quarter moon, we see the moon come up to conjoin Eris in Pisces, and it T-squares what is starting and is going to last a little while through to the next new moon, a Sun opposition the power stellium. And the Sun opposition to this power stellium may reflect in our everyday lives a sort of ego opposition to just the change that's happening. Pluto, the structure of power, Saturn, this newly emerging sense of view and vision and hope and optimism, Jupiter. We may just see complications here because Eris in Pisces is going to bring confusion. There will be confusion. There will be delay. There will be some degree of chaos with Eris making these T-squares and just affecting the moon by conjunction. So this is the part of the cycle, the waning quarter moon, where we start to let go and make way for the next new moon. And this, we're already going to be starting to feel these energies, these marked stress relationships, this T-square, and these strong oppositions. I want to show you, looking forward to the next new moon, that Eris will actually be stationed retro, T-squaring the Sun and Moon in conjoined opposition to this stellium in late Sag. And so this isn't over. This situation, the global situation, the emerging relationships and dissolving and changing boundaries that are kind of shifting under our feet. All of this. This is far from over. Even looking forward to August, the drama continues. So what we want to be doing, is this, waning quarter moon gives us a chance to start to let go of all these energies and make way for that next one, is to not get caught up in our projections, because whenever we have a sun moon in opposition to anything, much less something like this powerful, what we do is we tend to project all of our power issues, all of our daddy issues, all of our darkness issues, Pluto, Saturn, all of all of this stuff we project onto others, and then we react to it. So we want to just start understanding that this is what's happening. We have a sense of diametric opposition coming up as we look at this as the forward towards the next cycle, the new moon in July 2020. And we can do everything we can here, especially assisted by the energies of Pisces, to just kind of make our way as peacefully as we can through that. Would definitely be more advisable from almost every point of view than projecting all of your unresolved material out onto the world and then reacting to it. Unfortunately, Pisces and Eris are hallmarks of confusion. So we may see a lot of misdirected emotional energy around this time of 12th July. But hopefully everybody who's paying attention to the stars will have the advantage of recognizing the situation for what it is, and will be able to roll with this without being taken for a ride. We're going to roll with it instead of getting rolled by it. That is the plan. That is the plan. So yeah, we're likely to see a general trend of upheaval, strife, and chaos emphasized. We do see this connected Uranus and Mercury throughout the cycle. So I do think that one thing we can focus on is our insight, gaining clarity, gaining access to information, and moving forward, making progress, moving forward. There's a lot of positive here. And there's a lot of heavy and ominous characteristics to this too. So hopefully, having gone over this, we can lean into the positive. We can lean into what stood out for us and what's struck a resonance with our own lives. As always, I wish you the very best. And I thank you for watching. So, see you next month.